This is the One Piece Podcast, episode 621 for the week of Sunday, May 17th, 2020. My name is Zach.
And my name is Ed.
My name is Steve.
And my name is Alex.
And on today's show, we have a very special guest. He's the translator for One Piece in Shonen Jump and Manga Plus. We have Stephen Paul with us. How's it going, Stephen?
Pretty good.
We also have, from Japan, our Japan correspondent. He's also a contributor for the official One Piece website, one-piece.com. And V-Jump, Greg Werner is with us this week. How's it going, Greg?
Zach, I'm doing well, but how are you doing? I hear you have a 11th anniversary coming up soon.
Yeah, we do, on the 31st. Thank you for remembering, Greg.
I can't believe your wedding was 11 years ago.
I know, me neither. Although, now, recently it feels like longer, but in a good way.
I've aged well.
We're all going through our time skip right now, so it's fine. So, we have a very special episode for you today, and we're going to get into it in a moment. Stephen, do you want to describe what we're going to be doing this week?
We are going to be covering the 9th edition of the One Piece magazine, which is about which is a special on Ichiro Oda's design. But in fact, this one is so good. We've gone through all of the previous editions of the magazines, and we did a deep dive on the Oda interviews in the first few. But the rest since then have been, maybe not quite as exciting or as intriguing, although I think there are some very good issues among them. But this one really goes into some deep One Piece stuff and has a lot of really fascinating content. So my thought is we might not actually get through all of what I would like to talk about with this one. So we may actually end up going multiple episodes covering this because it's just too good.
Too much goodness for one episode. So we also mentioned, Stephen, I think a couple weeks ago, Oda mentioned that due to COVID-19, just to take things easier on his staff and to make sure everyone stays healthy and safe, the manga run is going to slow down slightly. I just think that means more breaks are going to be added. I don't think there's been any specific delineation as to what that might entail.
No, I don't think anyone necessarily knows for sure. They're probably just going to find out, like, okay, if we do this, and this to help, protect ourselves, then this is how fast it will go, and then we'll find out.
Yeah. So that being said, we're going to be taking. The One Piece is going to be taking a lot more breaks, so we're going to have a lot of extra fun content for you guys. So this week, as we said, we're going to do that first part probably of the One Piece Magazine Volume 9. Next time, we're going to round off and conclude or do the second or whatever part of our ongoing series about this magazine volume. We're also going to hopefully pretty soon do our One Piece Aces Story Volume 1 rundown. And I know Roger in particular, Roger's Base, went crazy about how good he thought this was. I'm still waiting for mine to come in. It's supposed to be here on Tuesday. I'm very excited to read it. So we're going to do that. I think we have a lot of other cool little things planned, including something for our 11th anniversary. So stay tuned for that. There's a little bit of news this week. Ed, do you want to bring that to us?
Sure. There was an interview with people from Tomorrow Studios on Deadline.com, and basically they were saying that One Piece is going to be filming, in South Africa by the end of the year. So, and people on Twitter have noticed that's where the series Black Sails from 2014 was also filmed. So it's believed they're going to be using some assets from that. And just looking up the Wikipedia on that show, went for 4 seasons, 38 episodes, produced by Michael Bay. So, and some pirates who, real life pirates who were fictionalized in that show were Anne Bunny, Jack Rackham, Edward Lowe, Blackbeard, Woodes Rogers. So it's
we should probably point out when you say reusing some assets, you're talking about like physical props and sets and
physical,
things.
Yeah. Not like no.
They won't intersperse random scenes from
no,
show.
No. It's not
just like Power Rangers.
Jiminy Jillikers.
Okay.
Yes.
So with that, We're gonna get into this this volume, and Greg, we have you on also, and I hope you're okay with me quoting you saying that this was probably some of the best supplemental material that you've seen since Data Book Green. I don't know if you hold by
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
There are little comments and notes in here that tell you that inform you about Oda's ethic and his work ethic and his work thesis, how he carries himself and how he formulates ideas and interchanges ideas and goes back and forth between using, not using, picking and choosing aspects to add to other characters and other scenarios. And it's fascinating. I have not had this much meat to go over in a very long time. And I'm glad that Stephen's here to walk me through it. I can just kind of sit here and listen to him. That's why I'm here. I'm not offering anything.
Stephen's voice is very nice to listen to.
Greg
so
just
with
couldn't
that out
wait
of the
to
way,
listen to the episode.
he needed to be on live. He's like, I just need to listen to some Stephen. So with that out of the way, I'm gonna stop talking so we could listen to Stephen talk about volume 9 of the magazine. Take it away.
All right, and welcome to our first installment. Just going to call it an installment since I don't know how many times it will take us to get through all of this stuff. But the first installment of Volume 9 of the One Piece magazine. And as always with the previous issues, it has the same, I guess, construction, the same cover style where they have Oda has drawn a pencil drawing of Luffy, and it is it's printed on a flat color background, but Luffy is white, and all of the pencil I would call it ink, but it is printed in ink that is embossed with a little reflective, like little green and bluish reflective sparkly things. So it is just a gorgeous color to look at. And in this case, the drawing is very appropriate to what we'll be talking about this issue because it is Luffy. He's got a giant brush that he is running along. He's got his tongue sticking out, so he's clearly concentrating hard as he's drawing on the ground. But if you turn to the back, you see that, in fact, this is Luffy. He's literally a drawing because there is a giant hand that is drawing him like an MC Escher or something like that.
This reminds me of that Looney Tunes episode.
Yes, yeah, it's the hand of God here.
Yes.
Is hand of Goda is drawing.
He said it.
I said it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay if I say it. So this is the title of this special episode. This special issue is Eiichiro Oda's Design. And we are going to be going through it. It has a lot of the same kind of, the same installments, the same columns and things that you see in every issue of the magazine. Like, there's a novel serialization. This is for the heroine's novel, and this one is about Robin, whereas the last one was about Nami. You have recipes from Sanji. Some like sort of picture book style things, and you have fan cosplay photos that were submitted, and lots of promotional stuff for Pirate Warriors and smartphone apps and so on and so forth. But the actual special to this issue material is all in the first half, and that is what we will be covering because it is a whole string of segments about his design, philosophy, and style, and just lots of different stuff. So we'll definitely be going through today the first big section, which is other creators talking about what they. It's kind of like his design studies or something like that, and it's a bunch of different people. Including mangaka and character designers and video game designers and even one of the guy who is like sort of the overall series director for all of the One Piece films. So the last 4, basically talking about things that they love, like picking out examples of like these are characters and other animals and other things like that appear in One Piece that they love and what it is that they find intriguing about them. And there's some really interesting comments about it, which it was really fun to read. And following that, there's a big section about Hungry Days, which of course is the Cup Noodles advertisement tie-in. And so there's an interview with the character designer Kubo-no-uchi, who is a mangaka himself, or at least a former mangaka. I don't know if he does any manga anymore. But then just like tons of pages of his designs of, all of these sort of teenage versions, realistic versions of the characters and whatnot. And there's lots of real interesting comments about that, about the kind of like the finding the balance between what makes it One Piece and then what makes this our style, our advertisement, and so on, which was really interesting to read about. And then there is a part all about the volume designer, the person who goes through and puts together, like takes the illustration and puts it on the cover design and arranges all of the SBS and just kind of the general process of how do you turn these weekly chapters into a collected volume. And like, what does it look like when they are sending the questions or having Oda write the questions up and draw his little drawings so that they can then print it up? And just all of this stuff is really interesting because this is the kind of thing that you almost never learn about. And he has some like favorite memories or things that he liked about previous cover designs and stuff. And so that's really interesting too. And then lastly, there is the section about Oda's, that contains a bunch of his actual kind of design documents and sketches about, various elements that he has created for different arcs. So all these things, they're all obviously based around this theme of Eiichiro Oda's design. And we're gonna see how far I can get before I get tired, and before everyone else decides, let's just call it a day. So we will begin. I already talked about the cover. So the very first thing, as always, inside after the table of contents is the dream illustration, where someone sends in a reader comment or a reader request, and Oda's like, "I really like this one. I'm going to draw this one," and then he draws it up. And in this one, the request is Ace and Sabo in their Wano versions. So we have this kind of cool overhead illustration of Ace and Sabo, basically, looking like Zoro or Sanji in their kimonos with two swords, and Ace is chowing down on an onigiri, which makes sense, although he's not asleep, he's awake. And Sabo is eating some dango on the skewer, and he has a poster, a wanted poster of Luffy, with his top knot and everything. So they are on the lookout for Luffy. And then there's, just for good measure, there's a Shiba hanging out with them.
I'm sorry, if I can make just like a note on this illustration. Maybe it's just me looking into it too much, because I noticed like some of the the line detail on like their chest, like their muscles, like Oda's using these lines. It almost looks like Frankie's scars. That's but what's it's just throwing me off, because like there's a few of them on Ace's jawline, and I was just wondering if that's supposed to be shadow, or if this is like some 2-year time skip Ace, hey, he grows out a little peach fuzz. It's just something I wanted to point out. And
I think he's got I think that the stuff on his chin specifically, that looks like it might be some tiny stubble. The stuff like under his jaw, I'm sure is just like the shading and the contour of his rippling neck muscles. But
and the freckles, don't forget the freckles.
Yeah, and the freckles. That's great. Yeah, well, his pecs definitely have that, he doesn't have enough skin to cover this much muscle. kind of look to it.
And yeah, for sure, like the lines underneath his jaw, that's not facial hair. That's just shadows. Otherwise, he would have donned the new nickname in the time skip. He would have been like, we have the black beard, white beard, and then we would have neck beard.
Neck beard.
So,
Nice.
I'm thankful. I'm thankful we don't have that.
It could have been Burgerham Lincoln, but he didn't draw him with this super crazy beard. But on the other side of that page, then we have the usual making of, where we have a bunch of different stages. Obviously, these drawings he does on on an iPad or a tablet or some kind of electronic tool, because you can see him kind of sketching out the little figure. I kind of like especially the second, like stage 2, where the Shiba looks like a little bear, almost like the ears are very round. They're very circular looking. And then later on,
does he draw dogs by making bears first? Isn't there
that's what I. And then he gets the proper curly tail and everything, but you can see him workshopping this stuff with like, okay, here's the guys first, and then here's the background, and then he kind of cleans up the background and the line art, and then he even drew the Luffy poster flat, and then I guess he must have learned how to do like stretching or imposing a layer onto a non-flat surface or something, because then it's all properly warped for the perspective looking down on Sabo like that. And then there's some color work. And Oda's comment about this one is, man, I'm just in a kimono mood right now. I've really wanted to draw a whole bunch of characters, with like proper, the same kind of color treatment that I would give in a color spread, to give them this Wano look for all these different characters that I really want to do. But one of the problems is that the drawing all of these complicated kimono patterns by hand is just like super difficult, and coloring them and doing all that stuff. So it just doesn't really work out time wise. So I haven't been like leaning into that as much as I might have. But here you go. Check out Ace and Sabo. So he managed to fit that in here with the magazine. That is his special dream illustration for volume 9 of the magazine. And next we get into some of the design stuff. All right. Next we have getting into design by Eiichiro Oda, and we have a colored version of the drawing on the cover of the magazine, which is kind of neat. And the first thing you see is these photographs of Oda's bookshelves, where he keeps all of his reference books. And man, was this interesting to stare at. I don't know, Greg, if you were just like squinting, getting the magnifying glass out.
These are the same shelves you can see in the tour of his office that is in the Jump Ryu DVD as well.
Although that's from like 2015.
Well, yes,
I'm guessing from 2020 or 19.
Did he get a rubber chicken since then?
Did you get to see is the Terminator in the picture? I don't have the magazine yet.
Terminator
No.
is off to the side.
Okay.
This is like his desk area. And his desk is its own like section, and it goes back and it's filled with like toys and stuff that aren't in here. But this is all his reference material. And then the Terminator is by the assistant's room.
Okay, it's by the snack table. I know.
Yes.
So I'm trying to see if there's anything like superbly interesting. So Greg, is there anything that he's there?
Oh, actually, there's something cool in here. I just noticed this, and I can't talk about it. Sorry. Wow.
All right. Thanks.
Wow, you made Ed sad. Yeah. Besides, what is there anything any of you guys noticed? Sorry about that, Stephen.
Panda Man
besides,
is on
Panda Man.
That photoshopped.
I'm pretty sure that
Oh,
looks
I see.
Photoshopped, doesn't it?
Yeah,
yeah.
weird angle down the corner.
fun thing though.
I mean, there's
Yeah,
Dragon
there's,
Ball and
Yeah, there's a lot of, you can see a lot of reference materials, especially on the right picture that's like the most close up, where you can see, like, if you turn it sideways, there's an advanced rune quest, there's a heavy metal book, the magazine, a DC Universe art book, some Lord of the Rings sketchbook by Alan. Oh, what's his last name?
Alan Moore.
Alan Lee, I think.
No,
yeah, it's the guy from the documentary stuff.
right.
Yeah, he's got some. Chris, he does have some stuff from the series itself. It looks like he's got some, like, these are probably anime comics from the movies. So, like, maybe if he wants to look up something from the films without having to actually pop a disc in, he can just grab the books real quick and flip to the page that has that scene or something, maybe. There's a big red one on the top that says dinosaur imagery, so I feel like he's probably getting some good use out of that right now.
Good.
There's one down here, 5,000 designs and motifs from India.
Nice.
Oh, he has a Star Wars Episode 1 book.
Yeah, I was going to point that out too. That's that's a pretty funny one.
Italian film posters.
If I had to
Sorry, I'm looking
guess,
at these.
I want to guess that the one to the left of the Star Wars Episode 1 that has the, like, red and blue checkerboard, that might be a Harry Potter, because
He also has
like
he also has the
paperback.
illustrated Star Wars. Sorry,
That's a good book. I've got that one on my shelf. He's also got icons.
it's like you're the
Jim
same
Lee.
person.
Oh, well, wouldn't that be something?
He also,
I've never
seems to
seen
have-
you and Oda in the same place.
Well, the difference is I wear
So-
glasses.
He seems to also have a supply of flying gasoline. It's a new invention.
Yeah, let's see. I know there's some other interesting stuff. He does have, you can see in the same picture that has the little Panda Man in there on the top shelf, he's got the perfect edition of Dragon Ball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see that.
Gotta have the classics. And it looks like some of his one-shots too, Sandland. I can't tell the other ones, but...
The one time I didn't buy a magnifying glass. Wait.
Get your
Yeah.
monocle.
I mean, you have
Oh,
so
yeah.
many opportunities too, Zach.
Oh, yeah, he's got a bunch of Ashley Wood books, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get to that in a moment.
Oh, there's the other One Piece magazines in this. That's really meta.
Yes. Yeah, there's a
Vivian
big
Westwood.
there's a big hardcover, like, book in a slipcase that looks like a book of aquatic invertebrates, which is kind of cool. I wonder if he must have used that for Fishman Island.
Yeah.
Um,
Screw the internet.
yeah,
Books are the only reference material it needs.
check out
Oh,
some
speaking
nice.
of Fishman Island, he's got some. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Che Guevara.
Yeah, Che Guevara.
Che Guevara. That's probably was what reference for Fisher
Caribou.
Tiger.
Or
Oh, yeah. Or the
I
caribou.
assumed it was the Caribou
Yeah.
cover
Yeah,
story.
both of two of them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
Have you guys heard of the book? What is this? Vivienne Westwood, or maybe that's the author.
Vivian Westwood is a brand.
Oh, okay.
I'm guessing.
I'm just
they'll
looking
use that
through
for
this.
design and like baubles that the characters wear.
The way
yeah.
Zach said it, I thought the full title was, "What is this, Vivian West?" What?
That's just how I speak.
You can see on that very bottom shelf, I can make out something of the Nazca of the Valley of the Wind. I'm not sure if that's one of the manga things or if it's like a anime from the film design book or something. But
Either way.
yeah, and as you can tell, we could probably go over this for ages. But they're not like it's very interesting. They're just detailed enough pictures that you can kind of make out a lot of it, but not quite detailed enough to see all of them.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah, you could really hurt your eyes squinting at this. So
right now I am zooming in. That definitely is a Harry Potter book. I'm zooming in on my camera, my iPhone camera, to see it closer. And it actually really works.
Wow.
Behind the camera with Norman Rockwell. Sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, let's actually, if we proceed onward, we get a little pickup where they have selected a number of the books, 7 in particular, or at least 7 people who are examples of those who have influenced Oda in his terms of design. And they say that he kind of replenishes and hones and refines his design sensibilities by, just absorbing as much sort of creative knowledge as he can from all over the world, modern or ancient, whatnot, just whatever he can find that strikes his fancy. And so he's got a couple selections here. Some of these names will be familiar, both just in general and also from previous One Piece publications. The first of which is Ashley Wood, who is an Australian illustrator and designer. He was featured in Magazine Volume 4 because he did the illustration of Law, where he's kind of doing it's like half robot, like half David Bowie, changes, like pose, and that was part of the Law novel illustration that they put together for when they were putting the Law novel stuff in these magazines, Oda really, really likes him. He's got they have an art book here, Zawa Zawa, which is from 2015 as an example. They have some pieces reprinted from it.
I'm sure it's very expensive.
Probably. He
One
says
way to find out.
It's kind of it's a bit of a two-way thing, because it's clear that Ashley Wood has taken a lot of influence from Japanese artists, and Oda thinks he's pretty neat as well. Number 2 is Mike Mignola, author of Hellboy,
it's only 30. It's 3,000 yen on Amazon Japan.
Ashley.
Yeah. The Ashley
Nice.
Wood.
Now, Mike Mignola, we've known this before, that he's an influence on Oda. I believe he's stated it in some interview.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if you recall, Steven, but this...
I don't. Yeah.
I can't remember that either.
Yeah, this wasn't surprising. I remember hearing it somewhere.
Mm-hmm. In fact, it even says that Masayuki Sato, who is he's listed among the designers. He's going to have a little segment later. The one who is talking about, this is how you draw, the hands and Luffy's face and Zoro's face, etc. There's a comment from here that said that he saw something in Oda's design where he wondered, like to himself, I wonder if Oda likes Mike Mignola. And then found out, oh, actually, yes, it's true. So that was kind of neat. By the way, I have to say, like, Mike Mignola's been doing a lot of illustrations of other characters and movies and things while everyone's on quarantine and such. There's been some really good work that he's done recently on his Twitter feed. If you haven't seen those, so
yeah, totally worth checking out. A lot of fan art, which is not something that he normally does.
Mm-hmm.
It's super cool.
Following him now.
I also wanted to mention something about Ashley Wood. If you haven't, check out his Metal Gear illustrations. They're fucking great. And I think that on his Instagram, Oda sent him a colored artwork autograph, which is pretty rare, right?
Crazy rare. Insane. And not only is it color, it's full color. I think for like fellow Shonen Jump authors, he uses only red, like he'll just color red. But for Ashley Wood, he colored every character in like, and not in incredible detail, but like he gave them their base colors. Amazing.
Oh, I forgot. Like Ashley Wood is very involved with the Metal Gear franchise.
Yeah, he's the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And number 3 on this list of 7 is Jusaburo Tsujimura, who, if that name does not sound familiar, you may recall if you picked up the second Color Walk compendium, he was the doll maker whom Oda interviewed to talk about his all of the doll making techniques that he used for particularly for these TV shows in, I want to say it was like the 70s and 80s, I think was most famous. He did some like Satomi Hakkenden, the story of the 8 dog warriors or the dog samurai. Yeah, just really neat, obviously super old fashioned, and has lots of these interesting comments. So I'm not sure. I probably went over that. Maybe I went over that interview when that book, not the Color Walk Compendium, but when Color Walk 6, the original Japanese book, came out. Maybe that was before we were doing them on the podcast. I don't remember. But at any rate, if you're curious for more about that guy, that is his interview with Oda is in the second Color Walk Compendium from Viz. So definitely check that out. Number 4 on his list is a name everyone is familiar with, Tim Burton. Yeah, I don't know how you could possibly look at Thriller Bark, for example, and not see the Tim Burton influence with all of his, his crazy sort of kooky gothic art and his stop motion style. Even Buggy.
Well, yeah, even Buggy. And you look at those, like the early Buggy designs, it's totally Tim Burton, man.
Nice. Yeah, great visual style for sure. Kind of unforgettable. If you've seen one Tim Burton movie.
I mean, I'll cut in quick. I'm not the resident artist here by any means, but I think one of the reasons why One Piece, looks so different is probably because Oda has a lot of Western influence in his art, or at least international influence.
I would say so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we even go back to chapter 1 of the series with the sea monster. Yeah. Like that is straight up. Yeah. The 2 eels from Little Mermaid that Greg named, and I couldn't.
Flotsam and Jetsam.
Yeah.
I would answer Stephen.
So number 5 here is this is an interesting one. The mecha design from the Time Bokan series. And this is what's the lady's name? It's the Yatterman Doronjo. Yes, thank you, Alex. It's funny because I feel like the actual character work for that series is from back in the mid 70s is very like Hanna-Barbera styled. Yeah. Very, very much influenced by that kind of, a little bit of that post-hippie colorization of stuff. But here he is singling out the mecha design from that. And there is a book that it's hard to see because the reproduction of the pages is real small, but it kind of just looks like if you take original Gundam, classic Gundam, and then had like animal designs, like very cartoonish animal designs. I think you can really see like the sort of whimsical side of the sort of machinery that and of the animal design that obviously that Oda is really drawn to. That makes it kind of light and fun.
That's that never occurred to me that the Brachio tank and the and then the other stuff, the Rhino cycle, were based off of the Yatter 1 and so on and so forth.
Interesting side story here, and it's quite a coincidence that they chose Color Walk 3. The cover of the Color Walks that have named animals, I mean, yes, they are the kings of their respective fields, which I think a lot of people have already gathered. But for the first 3, their sub-theme are the vehicles of the Taiyo Sentai Sun Vulcan, a Tokusentai series from Toei. And the animals are based on what they drove. I think it was like shark and I think eagle or something. One of them doesn't match up perfectly. It's like it's lion, but it's supposed to be panther or something. But basically, they're the same thing. So yeah,
super funny.
Yeah, well, they selected the cover of Lion here because actually the character design for the Time Bokan series was done by Yoshitaka Amano, which is crazy to think about when you, as you know, most of us would know him as the author, or not the author, the like the design artist, I guess you would call it, for
image design.
The image design for the Final Fantasy series, especially like the classic. You know, the old Super Nintendo ones. And
when you look
how
at
does his
style,
ethereal,
like,
fairy world, how does that translate? But oh well,
that's crazy. God, when I was doing the Outer Man episode of Toho Yaro, I really didn't do enough research in that department. That's crazy. That's something crazy to find out.
Yeah.
It makes complete sense though that he lists Time Bokan as an influence, just because the Doronbo gang is Hamburg, Porsche, and Fox.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and the Color Walk 3 tie-in is because Yoshitaka Amano was the person that he interviewed for that. So that one you can find in Color Walk Compendium 1. Next, number 6 on the list is Simon Bisley, who is a comic artist. He did work for Heavy Metal. That I don't really know much about this guy, so I'm just kind of reading off what they have here. Did Batman Judge Dredd art, and looks like Batman Lobo, Judgment on Gotham, stuff like that. So he's clearly done a lot of like the kind of crazy heavy metal, like both in terms of the magazine and also just in terms of, you know, like album cover design type work on Batman and other comics like that. And it says,
this is an interesting one.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead, Stephen.
It says, you know, the kind of gruesome nature and kind of wicked nature. It's like a very dark and very kind of heavy and thick style. You know, you wouldn't think that it has much to do with One Piece, but something about like the vitality of his line work and like the thickness of his muscles and flesh seems to have been an influence on Oda. So, you know, maybe when you see some beefy D. Luffy, maybe there's a little bit of Batman in him. And lastly, we have to switch things up. We have Michael Lau, who is a Hong Kong toy designer. It looks like vinyl toys, and he has a book that they have picked up here called Gardener Gala, I guess, is how you would pronounce that. And he's got, I'm not sure if there's like a particular line that is famous that he works on, but it is totally in that sort of that kind of alternative, like vinyl toys and skateboarding, hip hop type culture that seems to have appealed to Oda. So that is the list of 7 things that Oda selected as design influences. And next we are going to get into his character design, and this is the guest portion of the magazine, where we have people like Kohei Horikoshi and Posca de Mizu and others talking about they're selecting characters that they love the designs of, and then adding their own comments as to what makes them so interesting, and like why is this such a brilliant design choice? Why does this work so well? And I was actually kind of surprised by how interesting and enjoyable I found some of these comments. So we will start off with the first person up is Kohei Horikoshi, and as I believe I said last time, he had to be extra, and he actually drew the characters that he chose himself. None of the other people did. It's just the the classic color illustrations from Oda, but Horikoshi drew his own. And so it's kind of like his favorite character designs, favorite characters in general. Number one is Zoro from 2 years ago. So he drew him with the classic, the Hachimaki, his stomach band, and his big old pants with the boots and everything, and classic Zoro. And
wait,
so
is it Hachimaki or Haramaki?
What did I say?
You said
Hachimaki.
Hachimaki. Okay.
Isn't that a character from Thanatos?
I don't know.
Isn't that what Jay Sherman always says?
Hachimaki.
All right. So his comments on Zoro are, he is kind of like he's the partner. He's the first buddy, the partner for the protagonist. And he's got this super short hair, like a sportsman's cut, an athlete's cut. He says, when I first saw Zoro take his headband, his handkerchief thing off, I was shocked. Maybe it's because I was kind of distilled in the age of Dragon Ball and Final Fantasy, where it was like your main character has to have big ass spiky hair. The idea that you would have this character who was just like a buzz cut, super short, was, it's just like that whole idea just came tumbling down in my mind. So he says it was an epoch making design for him. Second comment is the alien nature, the just absolute bizarre idea of having three sword style, the Santoryu, the third sword being in his mouth. He's like, this all that's all you need to know that this Zoro guy is wild. He's not a typical person who would like fight with a sword in their mouth. So it hit like the way that it looked, it was like it's this almost demonic kind of aura about him, like a demon of battle, the Shura, they call it that, like as in the Ashura. But at the same time, he has this. You can see the fixation that he has on this extreme fixation that he has on his goal of being the greatest swordsman in the world. And Horikoshi adds, personally, I think that the three sword style idea is one of, if you were to list like the 5 greatest inventions of One Piece, that would be one of them. So he clearly thinks that, this is like just one of the most awesome things that Oda has designed. And number 3 is the simplicity of his design. It's so simple that all you need is that haramaki, that big stomach band to stand out, even though it's a very plain item on its own. His design is so simple that all it takes is one little item like that to be kind of like the focal point or the thing that draws your eye.
If I can make a hot take, still the better look. Gotta say,
looks pretty badass. Yeah.
And in comparison with that and time skip, like this,
yeah,
a little bit more.
Can confirm about the 3 sword style. That was the entire reason I started watching One Piece.
Nice. Yeah, it's great. Well, it always makes me remember, like back in the early days. I don't know, maybe Alex might remember this too. I feel like it was maybe from like super early Arlong Park, but that there was like a fan artist who wanted to draw his own. Like, I'm going to draw my own manga. It's going to be, very influenced by One Piece, and he had like a guy who was like 5 sword style, and he is basically just a juggler. He would just throw the swords in the air.
I mean, not a terrible idea. It's just piggybacking off of I think a perfect idea.
Right.
Well, it's actually it's hilarious because that's Oda's reason. He's like, well, everybody has 2 swords.
Right.
3 swords, more than 2. It's got to be better. It's completely goofy idea for it, but it's in the execution.
Yeah, it's also like that. Also reminds me of just Luffy's insult to Zoro after Vivi leaves. He calls him 3 swords, and then he just says, "Oh no, 4 swords." Yeah, so good.
Horikoshi's number 2 character he selects is Apu. Very timely here. And he says, so his first point is his teeth are a keyboard. It is such a perfect match of character concept and design. It's just it's an idea that feels really good. You just look at it and you're like, oh, that's perfect. That alone puts him at number 2 for Horikoshi. His second comment is the long arm tribe. His genealogy that it creates a trickier what would you call it? It's a trickier design, trickier construction. So his silhouette is a little weirder. It makes him cooler than if it was just normal. And number 3 is the very strange or very distant a fusion of very distant genres of DJ scratching and Kempo martial arts. This is the kind of thing that you could sit at your desk and just like work on ideas and work, just sit there for hours trying to come up with ideas, and you would never come up with something like this. It's incredible.
A very Horikoshi design, Apu. Like Apu looks like he would be in My Hero.
100%. The thing that I really praise Horikoshi for are his own character designs, and this has already given me a lot of insight into how he thinks.
Yeah.
Apu, I have to agree, is definitely one of the characters that stands out most design wise, I think, in One Piece. So I think good comments there. Yeah.
His number 3 character is Shirahoshi, and I feel like, again, this is a very Horikoshi type thing with a giant woman, and then I love this little like mini Luffy where he looks very Deku-ish. Just kind of trotting down her tail. And Horikoshi's comment is, she's huge. Even in One Piece, the world of One Piece has lots of big people. Obviously, we know that. We make jokes about it almost every episode, it seems like. So you wouldn't think that this would be that rare of an idea, but the impact was just incredible. You have this, beautiful woman who is very timid, but also absolutely enormous. He's just incredible. So,
Kif, my favorite part of Shirahoshi is the boobies.
Now, there's something to be said here for how these authors draw their female characters. Because Zoro, look at him from afar and like squint, and you're like, oh wait, did Oda draw that? Look at Apu, you're like, oh, even up close, you're like, wait, did Oda draw that? Look at Shirahoshi, instantly you're like, wait, did Horikoshi draw that? Because of, again, the shonen authors with females, it's just what a weakness.
It's true. There's Horikoshi definitely has like 2 or 3 speeds when it comes to drawing females. So it's it
is Uraraka's face for sure, just right on Shirahoshi's design.
If I can make just a comment on all that, I think that's just like across the board in animation and comic design.
You think so?
A lot of maybe I think in manga and anime, I think it's there's a little less distinction, but let's say like the Bruce Timm designs, like the Justice League animated show, love those designs. It kind of cycles between 2 to 3 body types and maybe even less for the female characters. But I think that's just a problem across the board. But Yeah, very rampant in manga for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they also included his just for extra context, his SBS submission from what was this volume 23, where he submitted the smoker illustration. So obviously another favorite of a younger Horikoshi. And our next artist who has comments is Posca Demizu, who of course is the mangaka who does the art for Promised Neverland. And she, I believe it's a she, right? I think that the team of Promised Neverland is.
Yeah, I know that if she is correct, that she is on Twitter, I think, pretty actively, and it's a good account. And I really like her art style. Yeah, it's very different.
Yes, and so we have some much more unconventional choices here, which is interesting. The first character that she selected was Talaran, the spider monkey from the General Zombies on Thriller Bark, and she said,
I think this one freaked out, since we had him on last week. I think this one freaked out Grant a tremendous amount. I don't remember his. I remember something there, but this is a cool, fun choice here for number one.
So she says, before I had started reading One Piece, I was just kind of flipping through something at random, and I saw this character and was like, "Whoa, that's so weird! I want to read this." So. Every character is someone's favorite, and apparently this was the hook, was the giant spider monkey who got the Promised Neverland's artist into the series. It's great.
Not surprising.
It's not monkey,
surprising at all.
It's a monkey. It's a spider. Why are they mixed together? Well, I guess it doesn't necessarily come across to a Japanese audience if they don't know that the spider monkey is the name of an English name for a species of monkey. But it's like a gross, creepy combination, and yet if you look at its face, like with the eyes and the mouth, it has a very lovable and kind of cutesy look. So
hard to disagree.
I love. Well, I mean, it doesn't look like a realistic, like monstrous type of thing. It's a very cartoonish look.
I mean, cartoonishly, horrifying.
So she says, I love monkey faces. So it's just whenever I see that character, it's just like boom. My eyes are drawn right to that face. It's the perfect balance of design, that it is gross and yet appealing, that makes it awesome.
She has a style, as Alex mentioned, not surprising. Yeah.
And then there's like a special mention here. Not if it weren't for Tararan, this would have been number one, which is the Super Spot Build Duck Squad.
I love her taste.
I believe that there are actually multiple. I think someone else pointed this out later in the issue as well, so it gets double coverage. But the fact that the combination of like character design, the way that they look, and also their hats, their headwear, is so perfect that it just each one tells you exactly what you need to know, or what that character is like.
So, Steve, I have a very important question. Which one was played by J. Michael Tatum?
I was going to ask you which one is Duck B.
There must be a way to find this out. But
which one was played by Jan Michael Vincent?
That's a different one.
There's only one Jan Michael Vincent. Which one's Schmangela? Schwanathan?
Okay.
I'll do some research one day. But yeah, good taste.
Mm-hmm. Her number 2 character is Sogeking, and she says, this would be number 1 at immediately causing me to bust out laughing when I see him. It's that he's wearing the mask and yet his nose is still sticking out. that it's not much of a disguise at all. And she says, but on a more serious note, or in a more serious comment, I really like his weapon design. That it's a slingshot, but it has this huge long handle. So it's like, it's as tall as he is pretty much. It's like that's the kind of weapon that a king should have. Was there really like this? Does a slingshot need that much leverage? And has like a bunch of exclamation points and question marks. So
she's got a really good sense of humor.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. And number 3 is Wiper. And she's like, man, this is so cool. I love the way that Oda Sensei designs his characters' tattoos. They look awesome. And on top of that, you have like just the design of all the dial shoes that they wear is so, it's both functional and also bizarre. And it's that kind of like attention to very unconventional detail that gives all of this sky mecha so much of a reality to it, and makes you just, it's part of the wonder of Skypiea that this kind of design just, it seems to it's like the sky is the limit. It's so creative. It's like what could he do next? And then they picked out some panels of specifically the one where I think this is Braham, right? When he does the backflip forward over Zoro, and specifically how you can see that he is in a straight standing position. So he's not tensing his legs at all. He's not jumping off the ground. He's just immediately from a standing position flying over Zoro's head and flipping upside down. Just what a fantastic design and idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is such a great panel, and this is like not really a technique Oda tends to do.
Like the montage of all the figures in the same panel. Yeah,
classic 1960s Marvel.
Yeah.
I'm
pretty sure she's also like the number 1 Wiper fan in the world.
Back to the tattoos and unnecessary attention to detail. For Wiper's tattoos, I discovered this back when I was looking for errors. If you follow him, like we see Wiper at multiple stages through his life, right? Mm-hmm. You can see the order that he gets his tattoos in. I think it's like the arm one. It looks like an anchor. It's a circular pattern on his arm. On his arm is one of the earliest, and then he gets another one. I think like the last is the face one, maybe. But Oda actually paid attention to like the level of tattooing that goes on in these characters as they grow older. Maybe that's even like part of their culture.
It's pretty dope.
Yeah, that's really
cool.
awesome. Yeah, I mean there are a lot of cultures that have that. I know in Southeast Asia specifically. I think. Go ahead.
And then she has kind of like the last 2 honorable mentions that she also includes are Dr. Kureha for the pants, like the way she holds her hips, the wrinkles on her forehead, and then Miss Golden Week, her little suitcase, her briefcase, the way that she sits, her bracelet, I love the strange little designs that he includes for these characters.
I'm excited to see what she does, this artist after Promise Neverland, since that's wrapping up. This was a really enjoyable take here. I like that.
Yeah.
Some real deep dives.
Yeah. And then on the next page, this is her last bit of commentary, and it's just kind of some general design things that she talks about. And so the first one is the just the fun nature of his ship design. She says, I love the designs of all the ships, especially the seafaring restaurant. So they have the pictures of the Baratier, both when they arrive and then when it starts getting busted up in the battle. I love that it's awesome that it doesn't look at all like a ship, and yet it still has a cool design. When you when you start drawing ships, you might be like, okay, this is going to be a galleon, so that means by definition the mast has to be in this position, and at this era in time it's like this, and there's all these rules to what makes it, a proper illustration, and yet he will, take those rules and then just completely overturn them, and that's what makes it so unpredictable and so fun. I think this must be the part of Frankie that exists inside Oda Sensei. Let's see, there was the what was this? Okay, volume 46 in the SBS. There are the like design images and sketches for the Sunny. And she says that that was like the SBS. That was the omake section that I spent the most time just staring at. And
that was
admiring.
a really cool one. Yeah.
And also she says, I really like the way that the pieces of wood break when the ship gets busted up. It really, it sells that kind of wooden construction of these pirate-y ships, in a world that has all of this strange and interesting technology in it. You'd figure, well, they don't all need to be made out of wood, even if they are sailboats. But it's that thing that makes it feel like it's grounded in the pirating era of the real world. So that's kind of helps balance out the infinite possibilities of all of his weird technologies. So makes it piratey. She also says she loves the patterns that he draws on things, and the sample illustration here is of the jousting color spread with Luffy and Zoro doing jousting, and there's the English, "Is he strong? Watch off," which whatever that means. But she says, I touched on this with Wiper, but I love the ways that the characters have tattoos, like the designs that are on them. And in fact, like pretty much all of the patterns of things, patterns on clothes, of course. But if you look at the color illustration for chapter 387, which I'm guessing this is the one that the jousting one, the designs on the animals themselves, on these horses, the fabrics, the designs on the weapons, on the shields, everything is just loaded with information, aesthetic information, and it's super fun. You see there's just so much information packed into each image, and it's really, you feel like you're getting so much out of them, even when they're simple. And she says in recent years with Jump, recently in Jump, he's been drawing all of these kimonos with these patterns, and she just feels like I'm just in heaven. Even on these little small panels, he's putting these proper little patterns in, all by hand. It's not a screen tone, and there's so much variation. Oh God, it must take so much time. But yeah, she loves all of the designs, or the patterns, I should say. And then there's the depiction of weight feels really good, and she has picked out the "You Gotta Be Free" One Piece, and this was the one with everyone up to Chopper, where they're all making fighting poses.
That's one of the couple of times, 2 or 3 times he's done this in color spreads where he quotes like famous lyrics. This is a Beatles song. This is from Come Together. I think he did it for did a line from Yellow Submarine as well. I think there was one other one that I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
And Greg, I think this is the one that he did for September 11th, if I'm correct. Yep.
That is correct.
Yeah. But she wants to talk specifically about the use of weight, because you'll notice here, this one, all of the guys they're all in a very wide leg stance with their weight low to the ground. And she says, I really like the sense of gravity of weight of, people like really putting their weight against the ground, especially in his color spreads, where you have, the camera is close to the ground, and so you're sort of looking up at the characters, and you got the foreshortening, so the feet or the hands look real big, and you really it's awesome. It feels awesome the way that you can tell how their weight is hung low, and she says, strangely, even the images where the characters are like floating, it still kind of feels that way for some reason, like just the ways that like rounded objects will bend just a little bit when they touch the ground, so that you get the sense of weight on them, and the folds of the clothes, the weight of the clothes. There's so many details that are very aligned with the roundness of the bodies, and that kind of weight that she really likes. So she also has a little comment at the end about Oda, because he did have he drew a little comment for volume 4 of The Promised Neverland. I forget if that was on, maybe they put it on like the little paper strip, the advertising strip that they put on the outside of the volumes or something. But where he's saying like, oh, it's only going to get better from here. Like, hang in there, Emma. And she just talks about how, like, I can't believe what, when she reads the comments, the author comments, and she's like, oh my God, Oda Sensei is having barbecue. He's playing Pokemon Go. Like, how is he doing all these things? It reminds her that it's like, oh yeah, when you're drawing a series, you have to find time to, to hang out and relax and have some fun for yourself. It's a good reminder for the proper work-life balance. So that
it's amazing. It's amazing someone learning that from Oda, since we all think of him as like the workhorse. But right. Yeah, it's good to see.
Yeah. He definitely has fun. Man knows how to have fun.
Yep. Good.
Yeah. The next person who has comments is Kinu Nishimura, who is a character illustrator and just kind of general series illustrator for the Street Fighter series. I know that she is on Twitter. I want to say I've seen people retweeting her stuff as well. And she's done other, video game stuff, but Street Fighter definitely her main thing. And so her first character that she chose is Perona, and she singles out the extreme impact of Perona's eyes, that she has these big, bulging, just kind of empty eyes. If you just look at her eyes and you don't look at any other details, they're kind of creepy. But she has this word that her own word, which is like placement energy. This apparently means that it's apparently this refers to like if it's a feature about something that is hard to digest. It's like you look at it and you're like, that is weird. I don't know if I can get used to that. But eventually over time, like the other aspects of the character you get into, and then before you know it, you can't think of them without that weird, challenging feature. And she says, so like if he had just drawn Perona with all of her other design elements and like his normal cute girl eyes, she would be, she would be cute, but extremely normal girl. And then she wouldn't be Perona anymore. So when you see those eyes, you're like, oh, whoa. But once you get used to it, it's like, there's nothing, it's an irreplaceable part of her design. And so she says, like, I love the whole Ghost Princess, like every part of her design is a perfect fit for that. She's got the parasol to show that she's like a fancy lady. And also, it's not just that it's like a gothic Lolita type of thing, but it's also, if you're a ghost, you don't want to be in direct sunlight, probably weaker to that. So, you can see the information, the design information that tells you about her character. And on the illustration of her in her post time skip, where she's got the big old dress, she has a little pink tattoo, the bat tattoo, the Moria tattoo. You'd think that she's like, oh, she's just this weird monster girl that she just kind of argues with people, and yet she's got these kind of cute and sweet elements where it shows how dedicated she is to Moria or Mihawk and all these characters that she comes into contact with. So it's a nice underside to her character. She really liked, she says that the original, what she says, Gyaru Gyaru version, her original, like super girly with the, the long tights and the skirt, that was cute. But then her more elegant version 2 years later with the long dress and her exposed arms is a very nice, lovely drawing. And
I don't
think
I ever noticed that Perona has the Mihawk's cross in the middle, which you mentioned, kind of as the ode to. Yeah, I don't. Somehow that passed right by me.
I mean, I guess it's
thing, yeah.
It shows the wisdom of teaming her up with Mihawk, since he is also a very gothic character.
Oh yeah.
So it doesn't seem like a stretch to go from hanging out with Moria to hanging out with Mihawk.
Yeah, although I guess where is she now that Mihawk's back on the run in his little coffin ship? Where does she have to go? Yeah, yeah, she can't fit on that ship. I guess she could float over it or something. Anyway, go ahead.
And she has some other examples of weird features of prominent characters that are, just like instantly iconic, including Usopp's nose. So the first time you see them, much like his name would suggest, you're just like, is this a lie? Are you lying to me? Is this a joke? What is this? But once you get used to Usopp having this long protruding nose, it starts to look cooler and cooler. And then, like, if he had a normal nose, it wouldn't be satisfying. It wouldn't be Usopp anymore. It's a magical bit of design work. And she also singles out the chin of Ivankov, specifically both male and female form, that it is the same thing and yet it's slightly different. It's pointier with male Ivankov, and it's rounded for female Ivankov. You can still recognize, obviously, Ivankov has many recognizable features. You don't need the chin to recognize them, but that's a neat touch. And her second selection is just all these straw hats. And she has comments about, not only there are both large symbols and small symbols. And so large symbols would be just like their silhouette in general, like their, what their size is, what their physical balance is. And yet the small symbols are the little touches that identify them even in close-ups. So those would be things like Sanji's eyebrow, Nami's tangerine tattoo, Usopp's nose, Luffy's scar, Zoro's scar, Robin's bridge, the bridge of her nose. Just little things. It's it's that kind of thing. You need that thing where you can just draw just one little line or one little series of lines, and then it's instantly, there you go, that's the character. She has comments. It's not only that, but it's just that the balance of all 9 of them, of course now there are 10, but I'm sure she would say the same thing. The balance of all 9 of them is perfect. You have, it's just a perfect balance of all these different elements where none of them are overlapping each other. Each one has their own coolness, and they're not, they're distinct from the thing that makes them cool is distinct from one another. So even with the 2 females, you have the dark hair and the light hair, and they have very contrasting personalities. And with the men, you have long nose, the animal, the robot, the skeleton. just this big variety of of figures, and they all have different eyes, of course. So everything about them, all these little aspects of their design are very meticulously done to separate them from one another. And so here are some of the comments that she had about each of them individually. I guess I'll just go in order. Luffy says, she says, his trademark is the the kind of like the symbols of the show itself or the series itself, the straw hat and the scar under the eyes. He's got, he wears these kind of loose outfits. They're not too crazy. They're very comfortable to move around in. So they're very boyish, which is what makes him perfect to be the protagonist of, he is the protagonist of boys manga. Zoro, he has, it's a great combination of, this, that he wants to be the strongest warrior. He's got the stomach band, the haramaki, and the katanas. And he looks even fiercer in 2 years once he gets the scar over one eye. So he looks even more dangerous and menacing and cool. Let's see who'd be third. I guess that's Nami. Nami, she says she's very sexy, of course, but with Oda Sensei's art, it's not so erotic that as a girl, when you look at it, you would feel awkward or you would feel uncomfortable looking at it. She's got that. She's so cute. You look at her and you're like, oh gosh, I want to be like her. But she's not the heroine. She's not the object of affection who needs to be won over or whatever. She's one of the gang. She's one of the heroes. And she's, doing her best. She's fighting and she's, helping out and doing all that stuff. And that's what makes her neat. Usopp is, she says, this is just something that I heard on the grapevine, but apparently Oda decides he gives Usopp these kind of quirky elements like the bandana on his head and stuff like that, the puffy pants maybe, because if he drew Usopp more conventionally, he would look too hot. She was like, yeah, I could see that. Yeah, but he does look really cool. And the nose, the design of the nose, of course, is it's a one of a kind element. So that's kind of funny. It's like, all of the things that he has to do to make sure that Usopp is still kind of like the wacky, goofy, fun-loving, the human one, and not like Mr. Not like Mr. Prince, who is always suave.
You can't be funny and good looking. It's not possible, apparently, according to
not every character can be as cool as Law.
Yeah. For Sanji, she says, you can tell. She says that you can tell Sanji's family instantly by the curly eyebrow. So that's a neat design, and his slimming suit design, his look where he's always wearing suits, really makes the leg combat, his kicking combat, shine. Because you got all these straight lines from him extending that leg, so it's a cool combination there. Chopper's comment: the mascot of the crew, and by turning the mascot of the crew and the child position, the kid of the crew, into an animal, he doesn't overlap with Luffy. So the fact that he's got the horns and yet he also wears a hat is a very fashionable choice. And the fact that he's adorable, and yet when he powers up he looks freaking awesome is this is a funny choice of words that they say in Japanese, nido oishi, which means it's delicious twice. So it's like you have your cake and you eat it too. You get it both ways. with Chopper, which is great. Robin's comment is the cool beauty, contrasting with Nami. The choice of making the bridge of her nose 2 lines instead of 1 is an interesting. It's a bold design choice. It's the thing that you look at and you're like, Robin has to look like this. She's got to have the lines on her nose, and the fact that she is a totally smoking hot, awesome babe is just true to form for Oda. Next, it would be Frankie. Frankie, the power type, the pure power type, and a robot. And yet the fact that almost none of his character aspects overlap with any kind of traditional, what you would think of as a robotic character, is perfect. He's got the smooth, swept up pompadour, the triple cleft chin, and the robot nose. So he's, even with his giant form, he still has cool details that you can see on a close-up. And lastly, for Brooke, our barren corpse. Obviously, you would never confuse him for anyone else. No, certainly not on the crew. The role that he plays of being the musician is perfect. It's wonderful. He is you need to have a singer, someone to buoy the crew's spirits on a pirate crew. It's just the way it has to be. And she also likes that his fashion style, probably because he is the musician, his fashion style is the most out there of the crew, and the most unconventional. So it's a good match for him being a skeleton. And so, yeah, that's all interesting. There's some, a few more comments about fashion and their powers and whatnot, but we got more stuff to go through.
If I could just before we move on, just talking about just the eye designs, this was really interesting for me because I don't know if you guys can notice, but just there is it's obvious with characters of course Chopper and Luffy have different eye shapes, but for characters like Nami and Robin, and we were just talking about this earlier with women having very samey designs, they have very different eye designs, and I'm not just talking about just the colors of the irises. Robin's is more angular and doesn't have the eyelashes, while Nami's is rounder and she does have the prominent eyelashes. It's just an interesting thing I wanted to point out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. For as much as you can say that about his similar female designs, he does differentiate between those two in the ways that are important.
You could say the same thing about Zoro and Sanji too. Two of the cooler guys on the crew also have very different eye designs, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and also the mirroring. What is it? The eyes. The working eyes are on different sides. It's always a funny thing. Yeah.
So, Kiru Nishimura, the Street Fighter designer, she goes from talking about all the things she loves about the Straw Hats to her final choice, Hannibal. She's great. Great juxtaposition there. The holy trinity of naming, concept, and visual design. And she says, man, to think that the day would come when I get to talk about how awesome Hannibal is. This character is amazing. It's this unification. His whole design is all about the combination of being a jailer, this prison guard, and a demon, and yet you have the sense of wonder of this absolutely inexplicable pharaoh design that he also shares. It's just, you see him once and you would never forget him.
To be fair, his design makes absolutely no sense when you think of it.
Yeah, It's great.
And his hair sticks through the pharaoh thing. What do you even call that? What are those called? I don't even know what those are called.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
The headdress or whatever. Yeah. So, first of all, you have this kind of free association from the prison guard to the demon, as a demon being like the guardians of hell who, keeps you trapped there, to the Hanya, which of course is the kind of type of demon, and the mask, like the super angry, demon of wrath, basically. So you've got, both the appearance that ties into that, and then you're mixing Hanya with the name Hannibal to make his name even more grotesque. It's just like this is a prize-winning name, she says. And yes, and then you have, for absolutely no apparent reason, the pharaoh taste. He's got let's see, normally when you think of the pharaoh, like King Tut or something, the jutting chin, it's sort of like it's like Django. It's like you have the little protruding beard, right? And yet for Hannibal, it's just his chin. It's just this giant block jaw.
Why did I never put two and two together there?
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
It seems like this seems like it would be really fun to draw. And then you have his gut. He's got this protruding gut, and it's kind of like demonic, like a little impish kind of a design element. It has nothing to do with being cool, but that's what makes it awesome. And there's lots of other stuff that she says is like that. She loves that. Magellan is dressed up like he's got his full suit and his boots and his hat and everything. He's in full uniform, and yet Hannibal, for whatever reason, is half naked. You would never ever confuse him for any other character.
What's crazy is like he has the start of a 6-pack, and then it just turns into like this belly. It's crazy. Yeah, I never really noticed how insane his design is, but it is all types of insane.
I don't necessarily agree with her that there's no reason to the pharaoh image. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that we're in hell, and this is like an afterlife. It's different interpretations of the afterlife. And he doesn't stick just with Buddhist hell. I mean, we have a lot of different. The devil, even the devil itself, is he's got the trident. Yeah,
true.
There's a lot going on here, and maybe the pot belly. I don't know about this, but might come from the what are they called? The gaki.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Oh, wait, does it say that?
Yes.
Is that okay? All right. Well, there you go.
Yes, it says, この下っ腹はガキのイメージ. So
it does say that. There it is. Okay.
Yeah.
It helps when you read these things.
Yes.
Well, I can't.
Yeah, and then they also point out that she was the illustrator who drew one of the images. She was one of the guest artists for volume 2 of the magazine. Where she drew a very cool picture of Ace to go along with the Ace novels.
Yeah, those look great. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. The next character, the next design person. This is the only one that I'm like completely unfamiliar with. Kazui. And according to the list of the artist bios that they have at the front of this section. He works with Idea Factory, and he has done some VTuber, so some VR YouTuber, like those CG YouTubers, Cafe and Bar Dante's Peak, and also Hypnosis Mic Division Rap Battle for King Records. So. Something like that, but he is a character designer, and his first selection is Ace, number 1, Porcus D Ace. As he says, the hat. seems like a lot of thought went into the hat. Like he was real picky about which hat he wanted to wear. The orange, he's got the orange that matches his belt, the hat and the belt. So that kind of becomes Ace's color. That's cool. He's got the freckles. He says, I like that. Of course, we know there's a reason for this because they're not related, but that the younger brother doesn't have the freckles, but the older brother does have them still. That's kind of cool. If he didn't have the freckles, he would be too cool. He would kind of look, his cockiness wouldn't give that third dimension. He would just seem like kind of a cool hotshot dude. But the freckles give him a bit more of a youthful look, and it puts him closer to Luffy in terms of like kind of where they are as where they sit as characters. The various accoutrements. So yeah, when you look at it, the more you look at Ace, the more you realize, wow, he's showing a lot of skin, but he's also got a lot of little items with him. And the fine detail of each one of these things probably helps to, because he isn't wearing a shirt, for example, you got all these little items with details that, kind of help complete the design of his character. And he's got the tattoo as well. So it's kind of neat. It makes him, the overall vibe is that, he has a bit of a tribal feel to him. We've got the coloring that he's got the black boots and the black shorts. That unification of colors is super cool. If you want to add detail and information to your character, the quick and easy way is just to put some patterns or something on the fabric itself. Yet it's, Oda does the bold thing and just makes his shorts flat, black, nothing else to them. Just very unified in that sense. Also the necklace, the beads, the Juzu beads, as they call them in Japanese. They're nice and big, so they catch your eye. It makes it looks different than if they were smaller, like necklace type beads. So he might have seemed a little softer if it was a smaller or finer necklace, but he's got these big honking beads on it. The red color matches Luffy, and so yeah, it's kind of got that synchronization going. That's cool. He points out the muscle line, and it is drawing. It is looking at specifically the angle where his the broadness of his shoulders finally goes down to like the slimness of his waist. So it's that like big kind of beefy look. It's like, man, this line, it's not fair. It's such a strong, it's the inverted triangle silhouette where it's powerful on top and yet it is slim and compact at the bottom. He says it's kind of, it feels like it was a very distinct and intentional choice to have that convergence kind of at his midriff, like at the base of his rib cage, essentially, rather than being too far down towards his waist, because then that might look more feminine. So it's a very masculine look. The belt, the cocky, like the unbalanced belt. So it has this fashionable style to it. You get a sense of playfulness from that. And you see that unlike Luffy, it feels like Ace, he's particular about how he wears his clothes. That makes him feel more grown up and a little bit more sophisticated. He also loves the particular length of his shorts. Like, that's a perfect length. If it was too short, if it was any shorter than that, he would look a little bit more boyish, I guess. like Luffy is like the kid, obviously he's the kid brother. So you want Ace's shorts to feel a bit longer, and yet if they were too long, if they went too far down below the knee, he would look kind of too thuggish or kind of too much of a cool guy. So it's kind of he says it's difficult to have a grown up male character wear shorts. It's a difficult balance to do, but he pulls it off here.
We call him Shortskis Ace.
Shortskis. All right, Steve, you know what to do.
I'm already working on another one, but I can be swayed.
All right. And lastly, the boots, that it is very ace-ish that the boots kind of feel like they're loosely done. You don't want them too tight because he doesn't seem like that would be fitting his character. He's a cooler dude. As we know, he is the Poochie, the laid back surfer type dude. So he needs to have that roughness that feels comfortable. So that was comments on Ace. His second character that he picked out was Smoker, and he really likes, in particular, the gap between his upper half look and his lower half look. That seems to fit his characterization. So, Smoker's got this very rectangular silhouette. Boom, real heavy set, solid looking guy. He's got this, he seems to be a combination of both dignity, like he's a guy, he doesn't like to be undignified, and yet he's also kind of wild. But he's also got the proper sense of weight and of gravity, fitting his age and his rank. He likes the mismatch between his very loose upper half, because obviously he's always got his shirt open, and his he's got the cape around his, or the cloak around his shoulders, but not with his arms to the sleeves, and yet his pants are very straightforward, very cut and dry, not doing anything fancy with them. So he gets to the core of his nature, which is the guy who belongs to the Navy, to the Marines, who is a bad boy at heart. So which seems like a pretty good representation of what Smoker is. So what are his comments here? The picture that he selected was of after the time skip, where he's got the hair all slicked back. He says the all back look is just not fair, because younger, you see the when he was in Loketown, his hair was more spiky. It was kind of loose. It was still short, but it was kind of wavy on its own. And yet now he cracked open the pomade. He keeps it firm, stuck to his skull, and so you get a sense of time has passed with him, and it seems very much in character that he would be putting on the hair gel every day. So that's a real great part of his character. He's got the exposed chest, so it kind of tells you that he doesn't like to feel kind of trussed up or held down by things. He wants to feel free to do as he sees, and so that the fact that his shirt is always kind of loose around him means that he always has a very solid outline. You don't get that. Not the same thing with Ace, where he's got the slim sides after his broad shoulders. Smoker is just.
Yeah, I just realized all of his choices have extremely exposed chests from all men, all men with 6-packs, 12-packs, 15-packs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he really likes the boots, like fully laced up. He thinks that's kind of sexy. It's like this guy who seems very rough edged, who is kind of loose about certain things, and yet every morning he's got to take the time to lace those bad boys up. It kind of tells you something more about his character. The two cigars obviously is a great idea. And as is the fact that he's got them like ammo bullets. He's got a
I love that part of his
six-pack
design.
waiting for right on his breast pocket. It's great. And then the gloves. The gloves are interesting. It makes it feel more like a uniform, and it helps balance out the fact that his chest might be exposed, but his hands are not exposed. So it kind of brings some balance to his character. And his last selection is Dracul Mihawk. So this guy, he's like, this is how you show off. It's a guy who has a slender design, and yet he is not too effeminate. He manages to carry that this is the strongest guy there is, kind of feeling to his design. So there's an elegance to him, a refined thing to him, where it's not just like this guy is the strongest because he's got gigantic rippling muscle. So I guess this Kazui here is tossing Kaido under the bus. But Dracul Mihawk, he's it's pretty hard to do a male character in purple, but he manages to do it with the wine red here, which is really awesome. And the fact that the more you get to know him as a character, the more you realize he has these kind of sweet, kind of adorable touches to him that he would probably never admit, but that aren't part of his design, or as part of the fun of following him in the manga. And so some of these things that he has picked out, of course, the pattern on the shirt and on the inside of the cloak. That's just pure fashion. It's so awesome. You can tell that he really is very particular about what he wears. The cutaway of his cape, how it's more of a shirt on the top, but then when you get to the waist, it does cut away to become only a cloak in the back. So that is super fashionable. And it's really neat, very elegant. His pants, the way he ends them prematurely with the boots, and then he's got the double strap belts. That's a real cool design. It feels both very particular because it's two belts, so he's extra cinched up, and very kind of refined in his air. If you didn't have that, it would feel totally different. So yeah, I think the boots are real cool. Mihawk's hat looks very expensive, looks very noble, very refined. His face, all the parts of his face, the eyes, the eyebrows, the facial hair, the sideburns, all of them are upward and pointed. So you really feel like they're very sharp. You feel like this is a guy who will cut you with his design, and very severe because of that. So he feels it's like he's not sure how to translate that, but it's like he's so severe and withdrawn, yet that seems somehow sexy. That there's some sexuality exuding from that. The silhouette of the big cross sword, it looks awesome because it's not a super fat sword. It's very slim and very long. That's cool. His belt, his regular belt, not his boot belt, is neat. It's very tight. It keeps his pants firmly cinched around the waist. The bottom part of his cloak, not on the shirt part, but the bottom part where there's no pattern, is just colored on the inside. And he says, I like to use this type of design motif as well, and it looks great for action, so that when the cloak flaps and flutters, you get the color underneath. Makes it look really dynamic and look really cool when it is fluttering with action or in the wind or whatever. It helps as a contrast as well to his white pants. You have this very dark red, wine red color. It's a great contrast. And his last comment about Mihawk is the width of and the length of the hem of his coat, the way that it adds volume to the bottom of his character design. So as you get down to his legs, it spreads out more, and makes his center of gravity feel lower because he expands as he gets closer to the ground with the way that the cloak flares out. So that means, maybe that's why, even though he is the one literally bearing the cross on his back, he feels like the guy who is doing the judgment rather than being judged. So it's an interesting contrast. And that was Kazui. Let's see. I think we're getting closer to the end of these different designers. The next person, now we're getting into the animals. So not as much the characters, but into the animal designs. And the first person here is Kaname Fujioka, who is the executive director of the Monster Hunter series. So clearly someone who would have a lot to say about animal designs and, big beasts and things like that. So this is kind of he has some interesting insights. And
I've translated
the first one,
so many of these man's work. I did a Monster Hunter art book for Viz, and there's just these constant back and forth with this Mr. Fujioka, and I'm very interested to hear what he has to say about One Piece.
All right. Yes. Well, the first character that he chose to talk about is Monster Point form of Tony Chopper. So he says this is a silhouette that even when it is drawn small, it conveys hugeness. And he says, when you're drawing things that are gigantic, you really have to get certain points. There are certain points that you need to cover to hit. Otherwise, it won't feel big. You can't just draw something big. So like if you're in manga, of course, sometimes that means you just have to draw a small panel and just have them fill the creature inside the panel. You have a person in the foreground who is small, and that way you can tell in the background that the gigantic character is huge. And so he's selected the scene from Enies Lobby where Kumadori is facing Monster Chopper inside the kitchen, and there's all the smoke and fire around. And
this is one of the most. Yeah, this is a badass panel. I love this panel.
Yeah,
and it was used in Brand New World, I think, in part. I think so. Yeah.
But yeah,
It wasn't. But
was it? Which one was it? Wasn't it in an opening? I'm not making that
Monster
up.
Chopper was in that opening, but it was a close-up. It wasn't this panel.
Okay.
But he has some examples of what makes the Monster Point interesting or stand out, that makes it look the way it does. And so he says, first of all, he has almost no neck. So his head just comes out of his torso. the shoulders are flat and they're angular, so they have that rectangular ending, and yet they're not thick. They look flat. The body is thin, so it feels lanky. It doesn't make you feel like it's huge and muscular. The center of gravity is very low. It feels like gravity is pulling down on him, and the extreme length of his limbs, of his arms and legs, in comparison to the body, are very striking. So, yeah, he says when you're drawing a character that is huge and powerful, there's a tendency to make them macho, like just bulging with muscles. But this, a lot of times with this giant, it's got to be, it's got to be more slender, like that. If you think of the wrestler Giant Baba, he was a guy who was very thin. He was not an Andre the Giant. He was a much thinner, very tall type of wrestler. And so, it's not actually the muscles that create the strength. It's the bone structure. It's the physical structure underneath. And so the way that Oda, put that into Monster Chopper's design shows how well he understands that. He does, they did pull out one of Oda's design sketches for alternate Chopper forms, and this one was Big Point, it's basically Monster Chopper, but where he's gigantic and round. Fujioka says, if you look at this original design drawing, you can see that he is very macho in this one, and his center of gravity is much higher. And he says, now, this is going to be, this is very arrogant of me to say, but I think that his current design, the way that he looks now, is the correct one to depict him as a giant. High words of praise for Monster Chopper. His second selection was for Zunisha, the elephant. And so he says, he has a couple different comments here. Like with Chopper, the silhouette of Zunisha is very rectangular. It's a very stocky looking image. You can feel both the size and the weight of the elephant looking at it. There's also the curious element of the mismatch. He says there's, it's not an uncommon fantasy trope to have absurdly large animals, creatures with islands or towns or things like that on top of their backs. But the wild thing in this case is that it's not an aquatic animal like a whale or a turtle, but an elephant. Something that actually has to walk. And that's in a manga that is themed around the sea and islands. So if you just look at the above the knee or whatever, it just looks like an elephant. And yet when you put it on top of the water, then all of a sudden, boom, that's Zunisha. Like, wow, that is so different. It's what the striking contrast there. And some of the other things that he picks up are the folds of the weight of its skin that tell you that gives you more of a sense of weight, the way that they hang down as you get closer to the legs, the way that the ears just droop downward, and the way that the eye sockets are sunken in. He says this whole design overall is not a lively one. It's like, you take the idea, the concept of the length of time that is 1,000 years, and you just distill it into an image, the way that this thing looks. That's what he's done. Because because otherwise it's basically just a regular elephant. It's a fairly realistic looking elephant. He really is able to get into those realistic details, and it only augments the concept. And I love this this design sketch too of Zoe that they've included. That it tells you that he was onto this idea the whole time, that this was not going to be like a Jungle Book elephant, like with big fancy eyes and lively look. It always looked very realistic and very kind of beaten down by time. So yeah, super cool design there. And his number 3 selection was the animals from Strong World. And first and foremost here, the forest octopus. He says, man, this design, like these designs that he put into all of these animals, it's like, they require an overwhelming amount of time spent looking at animals and learning about animals and studying animals. Like everything in the silhouettes of these characters has a meaning to it. And, because Oda is so good at focusing on like momentum with his drawings, that the silhouettes themselves have a power to them. And he's very clearly focusing on the bone structure, the physical structure of the animals, which is, the way that you make those characters feel real is for, giving them not necessarily a realistic structure, but understanding what that bone structure is and sticking to it. And that's how even these, fictional animals, these are not real animals, of course, and yet they feel realistic because he understands those concepts so well. And Fujioka says, I especially love the forest octopus. It's such a simple design, and yet it looks great. It feels great to look at. You've got this very aggressive creature that's, writhing because it has these legs. And so you're like, oh yeah, that seems real octopus-like. That's a very true to form way to draw it. And yet it doesn't fight by like wriggling its legs around. It's fighting by like punch. It's like a power fighter. It's a puncher. And so he's just jabbing out with his legs to go straight. And so it feels like, with all of those limbs, that it's like a Hyakuretsuken. It's like 100-arm punch or something. It's like a Street Fighter thing. And that's what helps solidify that character as its own thing, that contrast. And then he has these great choices for strange little details that are just so intriguing, such as the folds around the base of the rhino's legs. So where the legs meet the torso, they got these little bulging folds. The volume of the kind of neck, like the neck bulges around the gorilla, the bat gorilla's neck, and the flared out kind of flesh is they call it erimaki, the like the lizards that the bear has when it stands up, and the way that it spreads out like that. It's really cool. He's like, yeah, these things are all awesome. There's so many details that you would never notice. You wouldn't just like focus on this one detail if you saw it, and yet because of my line of work as working on this series, this Monster Hunter series, I have to study all these animals to help, work on the designs of these things. So you have to sketch and sketch and sketch these things. You can't just make it up from pure imagination. You have to workshop them. And the fact that he is, he's able to get the features of these animals and the things that make them neat and bring those out without putting too much in there that might clutter and take away from the original design or the original appeal of those animals' appearances, and makes it simple in the end, is, just it's how you can see how much Oda really loves animals and how observant and how hard of a worker he is when he designs and sketches out these things. It is the fusion of like high level character design that he possesses.
Never played a Monster Hunter game. I would start if there was one based entirely off of Oda's designs.
Strong World Monsters. Wow, that'd be pretty great. Yeah, and then he says that there's a little thing at the bottom that says, "Did this also have an influence on Monster Hunter?" And it points out there's a Strong World design book for Oda's creature design.
Yeah, that's I don't know how available that is, but that's a really, really cool book if you could find it.
Probably not that available now. I would imagine it's been many years since Strong World.
More than a decade.
Yeah. But yeah, it has all of his his design work on these many animals that he designed, including some that were only very, very briefly seen in the movie. And Fujioka says that he really likes that one. Apparently Oda said that the forest octopus, the one that Fujioka really liked in particular, was a concept that Oda was thinking about putting into Skypiea originally. So that was an idea that he had a while ago, which is kind of neat. Let's see. And the next person here for character studies is Yuri Yokomizo, and she is the character designer for Sumiko Gurashi, which is that
very
a Sander?
Popular?
Yes, yeah. I was trying to think. It's San X. I'm not sure if that's a Sanrio offshoot or not. But it's a very minimalistic, cutesy animal design line. Line. I'm sure there's plenty of line stamps for this if you search for them. But yeah, she points out some of these things are at this point. Yeah, we've kind of gone over some of these, but her first selection was 2020 Chopper. And so she talks about things like the horns and the combination of horns and headwear that is very neat, and the fact that with the 2-year time skip, it's still the same hat, but then you add the extra color, the complementary color of the light blue to go with the pinkish color, which is a great combination. She points out the combination of his roundness and where he is round and where he is not round, which is she says is one of the things that one of the appeals of Oda Sensei's art, because Chopper is in a fundamental sense, Chopper is round, and yet he has these things like his neck and his limbs that are actually quite thin. And so it makes a nice contrast. It's a good combination between round and very thin, which makes him easy to animate and to draw, with action in the manga. Because all of the Sumiko Gurashi characters are completely round, it makes it much harder to animate them, to draw them moving, because the ability to move them is much more limited because of that. Chopper's got, she talks about how great it is that he's got like perhaps the widest range of serious design to like deformed design, like depending on his emotional state, that he can have the most variety when he's feeling happy, he can be very cute, but he doesn't necessarily have to be. The hooves are another point that she brings up. They're so cute. This is my favorite aspect of him. They have a shape that I've never seen before or seen in other designs, and yet just the hooves alone are absolutely Chopper. It's like, oh, that's Chopper. Those hooves are Chopper's. And she loves that. It's not just that they're cute, but that they also form the Sakura shape when he does Kokute Roseo, or what is it, cutting hoof Roseo for his attacks. So there's an actual like character reasoning behind that design, which is very smart. And there's some stuff here about different color hues, seasonal color hues for like spring, summer, autumn, and winter, which is kind of interesting. And she says it's the kind of thing that people who draw a lot and use color a lot probably use unconsciously, like they don't even realize that they are compartmentalizing the different groups of colors this way, but that it definitely fits for Chopper. He has a very spring color look, which means lots of pastels.
I want to give Steven 1 second and ask, just let him rest his voice for a second and ask everyone here, do you have, and let's not be hipster about this, do you have a preference between OG, old school Chopper, and it doesn't have to be post-time skip or pre-time skip, but, Chopper as he has evolved to look today, essentially?
I mean, I've always been very on the record about this.
Yes, I know.
I love barrel body Chopper, or fat Chopper, as I like to affectionately call him. I think that like he's got that muzzle, and he has a bit of a weight to him. Like if you punt him, he makes sort of like a kickball sound.
Wow, that is specific.
like that's what I would imagine, And if you go back and reread Drum, he has all these really interesting expressions. When like his reaction to things, they're a lot different from what we see now, which is, Chopper has very bewildered, impressed expressions and stuff, or worried, and it's usually reflected in the eyes and stuff like that. But I feel like the original
the snout,
Yoji,
like that part, like going over his. Yeah,
well, it's not just the snout; it's also his eyes. His eyes are a little bit different too from way back then. His body type, and he, because he has more of a body from like back then, he can move it around a little more and emote that way, which I really appreciate. That's not to say I don't love. That's not to say I don't love current Chopper, but I really, really love Drum Kingdom Alabasta era Chopper in terms of
Greg,
design.
I'm interested in Greg's answer too. I don't know if I've ever asked you this.
I like the in between, and this is true for a lot of the Straw Hat designs. But right around the time of Skypiea is probably where I think I enjoyed his design the most. He was still a little fugly, but still a little like he could be cute. Whereas now he's mostly all cute all the time. Oda handles him well sometimes when he over exaggerates or is extreme, like when he does this creepy smile, like a really toothy grin. Like I like that kind of Chopper. But nowadays he's just too round for me.
And Steve, I'll throw it to you too, if you're there. Okay, guess not.
No, you see, I was being a good boy, and I was saying
yeah. And then, no, so Steve, what's your preference?
I like what Greg said. Like Skypiea is a good middle ground. I just remember the moment he did Chopper Man. That was just when things changed. Like it was like a lot of the differences in the Straw Hat designs over the years. Like you would not. You couldn't tell it was happening until you look at like those charts that people make. But Chopper, as soon as he did like those comic shorts, he did Chopper Man, boom. Chopper was never the same again. But I like both. The one thing I'll say about the original design, it was so distinct. Like that was so One Piece. Like I think like Chopper design today is still very like that's like a One Piece character right there. But he's more he's definitely cutified. He's more he's
a
meant to be
marketing tool.
more like just I'd say more akin to this like of stuff like Hello Kitty and like Pikachu, like to that kind of scale. I do appreciate the original Chopper design because it's like like this is kind of fugly, but it's cute in the context of One Piece.
Okay, I want to let Steven get through. Oh, go ahead. Okay.
No, I was just gonna say I love. I mean, I have a fondness for Ugly Chopper, but I'm also of the mind that like it's okay if there's only a limited amount. It just makes it that much more special that it was only for this brief period of time in the series that he looked like that. I wouldn't necessarily want him to go back or anything like that.
I think it does bear saying that the Water 7 era is just a really good all around design for all characters.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I'm like sure. I'm in Greg's camp in terms of that design methodology, but like a little past Skypiea, I guess. I think that's when Oda's art really did like that's like a shining moment. Yeah,
that's peak.
I think Skypiea, in the anime, I think is the start of the peak there. But I agree with the manga as well. I think that era between Skypiea and Thriller Bark is like peak Oda One Piece there. Okay, so Steven, please.
Yeah,
just want to give you a little bit of a reprieve.
You can hear it, yeah. All right, almost to the end here of this segment. Yuri Yokomizo continues by selecting Karu and the Super Spot Build Duck Squad. So this is a bit of an overlap with the person who mentioned them earlier, but I did like this one comment that she has at the top that what a fantastic idea that you have these mounted animals in this arc, and it's not, okay, horses, dragons, like that is old hat. What if you made them giant ducks? It's just what a shocker. That choice. It is awesome, and just talking about the fact that they're all so distinct from one another is amazing visual characterization. And she also just kind of throws out some general things that are distinct about the series, such as Luffy's eyes, like how fantastically simple and yet they're also fresh, especially for the time. I think they were fresh and yet also difficult to copy. It's like there's just something about the way that he designed them that's just half circles and a dot, and yet he has the perfect balance for them. The pirate flags, what she loves the variety, just the freedom of variety that you see in them. They're all like the symbols, the logos. They're all cute enough to be merchandise, which is awesome. And yet each one symbolizes the nature of the different crews that use them. She says, I think, of course, that the Straw Hat flag is the best one. But it's probably the secret to the cuteness is probably that it's all rounded. It's it's the exact kind of thing that like for all those kids, those children's drawing songs where they have the little song with the lyrics that tell you how to draw something step by step. It's that kind of simplicity of design. And when she was in middle school, she did the whole like, oh, think of your own pirate flag exercise based on One Piece. And she also singles out the clouds from Sorajima, from Sky Island. She says, I want to cut them, and it has the panel with all the cloud cutters and their scaffolding and all that stuff.
Greg, what are these clouds made out of?
Pyrobaline.
Wow. Say the line, Greg.
Say the line, Greg.
And the water meat. I want to eat that. It has the classic image of Luffy with his cheeks stuffed, just staring at this dripping sack of meat. I don't know. It looks a little soggy to me, but you know, I guess your imagination, it can take you wherever you want to go. And so that is it for the Sumiko Gurashi designer. And the last person here, this is the part where we talk with Masayuki Sato, who is the overall animation producer, designer for the film series. And this is his little like, here's how to draw One Piece. And he says, this is just my style. Every animator has their own, way that they choose what features they want to accentuate. But when I'm the one in charge who is like sort of trying to solidify the style, this is what I tell people to do. So he has, several little things about Luffy that are, make him who he is as a character. So, for example, his head, so his face and his head are round. Generally, they're not jagged. They're not angular. They're very round, and yet they're not circular. So it's tricky to get the balance right. He has to have that little point of his chin and the slight curve around the edge of his jaw or his cheek. He says in general with Oda's art, the peak or the point of the chin is not at the bottom of the line. So if you draw a line through the center of the face, so like over the nose, the point of the chin will not be at the bottom of that line. It will be on the inside part of that, depending on your perspective. And so that's one of those little details that makes things look more One Piece-ish. It's part of the way that Oda draws heads. So the chin is always a little more centered off the center line of the face. He says when drawing Luffy's bangs, his hair, he says that Oda himself told Sato, draw the bangs like they're growing out of the top of his head. So don't draw it as though they're coming out of like his actual hairline on the front of his forehead, but from the very top of his head. And so they have, on this illustration, you can see just how far up his forehead goes when the bangs are blowing to the side.
More like a 5'6" head.
Oh God!
Yeah, there you go.
Stole the joke.
And the points of hair. So like this for the silhouette of the hair, they don't droop downwards. They always go down and then point up. So they always go in that one direction. So he says if you, let's see, once you start drawing the upward pointing little tufts of hair, he immediately looks much more like Luffy. So he always tells his animators, watch out for that. Always make sure they are drifting upwards and that they're not pointing downwards, not hanging downwards instead. As for the silhouettes, the character silhouettes, He says Oda's art, you can always tell who is who by the silhouette. So that's good for an animator, because then it's you have more to work with as far as making the characters identifiable. And you've got among the crew, you've got some people with realistic proportions, and then you've got characters like Chopper and Frankie who have extremely deformed looks. So sometimes it's hard to like make it feel like a cohesive image when you have them next to each other, animated at the same time. So you have to be very careful for, just kind of where they're situated in the frame. And so he draws out Brooks drawing in this. Where did this illustration come from? I'm trying to remember. It is all 9 straw hats. They're all looking. Oh, this is Sanji's there.
I remember they're all looking at Luffy.
Yeah, they're looking at Luffy. That's right. Yeah.
I just don't remember what this was from. I'm guessing
it was from the spring, comic edition of like the up and coming authors. Like, hey, here's some possibly up and coming authors that are coming to Jump soon. I think it was called Jump Next at the time. Now it's called Jump Giga. And yeah, Oda did covers for this in the past, and I think regretted doing covers because people bought it thinking it was One Piece and it was not. So,
yikes. But yeah, he says, he points out that even Brook here, going by his symmetry line rule, you can see that the most pointed part of Brook's chin is off the center axis. It's a little closer to the viewer. Let's see, the female characters overall, compared to other anime, you keep the neck a little shorter and you draw the shoulders a little wider. And he says the women in One Piece all have extraordinarily bountiful figures, which one way to put it. And yet they don't necessarily feel unreal. I don't want to say unrealistic, but so there are nuances about them that make them feel slightly more real than just, an anime character. And he says it kind of feels like they're not characters who evolved through anime design, but were designed after, or like their image was taken from models or actresses, like real women, is the starting point, I guess. So I guess not everyone here necessarily agrees with that, but we're not all working in anime to have something to base to compare this to. Let's see what he says about Chopper. Mascot type characters ordinarily look cuter when they're. Let's see, what is Yorime? Is that eyes? I guess the eyes are closer together.
But crossed eyes.
Cross eyes. Okay. Yeah. But in Chopper's case, it actually makes him feel off if you do it that way. So that's why he's always got to have that 1,000-yard stare, just eyes smack in the middle of the eye.
And now you gave him a very creepy vibe that I never associated with him. Just staring into the middle distance.
Dead-eyed Chopper. And the male characters, for the most part, they don't have, they're fairly straight as far as their torsos go. They don't have a lot of angles to them. And Luffy's neck should not be too thick. It should not be too thin. But Zoro, you can draw his neck real thick. So
it looks too thick in the picture he chose that we were talking about. But
I don't know.
Maybe it's Zoro. Always that thick. Yeah.
Modern Zoro, at least.
Yeah.
Let's see. He says his comment is, when I looked at Frankie, especially, I'm assuming contemporary post-time skip Frankie, it made me wonder, does Oda-san like Mike Mignola? And he just thinks that kind of real blocky look is a very Hellboy-ish kind of taste to Frankie's design, which I could see that. At least with Frankie, maybe not so much the other characters. But then there was this little bit about the cheekbones, which is I know people are talking about that. One of the features of Oda's facial design is that he draws the cheek line very flat. A lot of times he says, a lot of people, when they draw big, tough, menacing looking characters, you jut the cheekbone out, you create this real big profile. And he says, personally, I find that kind of difficult to do. It's not a thing that I'm a big fan of. But it was easier for him to get into drawing the One Piece characters because Oda doesn't do that. And so you have this like do and don't illustration here where there's just a tiniest little dip of like kind of around the eye socket going from the brow to the cheekbone where it dips in just a little bit. But you don't want to have it be like a like zigzag angle. And yet, some of the characters do have these weird designs because they're, a very particular, like extreme design, such as Dadan here, who has a more deformed look.
Poor Dadan.
So yeah, he definitely has the jutting cheekbones. And lastly, the hands, which is pretty interesting. You see that he likes to bulge the lines of the fingers outward. They should not go inward when like Luffy's holding a fist. The more rounded look makes it more One Piece-ish. And there's also a difference between the male hands and the female hands. The women, obviously, the hands should look longer. The fingers are longer. They are rounded at the end, but they are still very slender. And the fingernails are very kind of rounded, ovalish, while the men's hands, they look shorter, and the fingers are stockier. They're more angular, and the nails should look like rectangular, like they're not squares, they're not circulars, they're kind of smushed down, and you can really see that in these examples that they've picked up of like Usopp's hands or fingers and Luffy's fingers. He finishes by saying this is a bit of a transition into the next segment, which I think we'll get to when we return to the magazine. That Oda's really good. What they say? What do you think? They ask Masayuki Sato, this animation director. What do you think the appeal is? What's the magic of the One Piece characters? And he says Oda is just a master at visual iconography, like images, just symbols, little things that say like this is the thing that belongs to this character. And so that's why you can have things like Hungry Days, these commercials, where they're drawn in a completely different style, and yet you can immediately recognize which character is which because they have these symbols as part of their design, these visual symbols. And Kubanouchi, the designer, was able to to take all of these varying design things and work them into a very cohesive look, even with all these many characters that appear in those commercials. He says that one of the things that's amazing about Oda's touches is that he can create such unique and totally unexpected designs. They're just completely out there, and yet they're still like in his own kind of inimitable style. They're clearly of his own type. It doesn't look like other people drew all of these different characters and animals and things. That's just how deep his design skill is. He says, the very first time I saw him, I was obsessed with Tonoyasu. Obviously Yasu Shimotsukie Yasu, the friendly sycophant from Act 2 of Wano. And he's like, who but Oda would dare draw such a character in a manga in 2019, 2018, 2020? Only Oda could do something like that and also have it be a cool character. It's just the perfect example of what he is capable of. And so, as I said, this transitions into the next segment, which is all about Hungry Days. But we've been going for a while now, so I think this is probably a good place to stop.
Yeah, you've been talking for at least 2.5 hours, so I wanted to give you a little bit of a break. So I think next time, and Ed, I think you had brought this up, and it's a good idea, we could do a kind of Hungry Days focused episode, since there's a big portion of this magazine that's actually devoted to that. And I know that there's a lot of material
by then
out there.
I'll have a copy of the magazine too.
So. And hopefully by then Ed will also have a copy of the magazine. But I hope Steven helped even people like Ed who have not been fortunate enough to get a copy of Volume 9
or who
of the
had to leave
magazine.
for an hour in the middle of the podcast to play bar trivia on Zoom. But
well, you could always come back and listen to that hour when the episode comes out, Ed.
That's what I'm planning on doing. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, nobody knew you were gone.
So rarely that I get to listen to the podcast without knowing what happened already.
Yeah. Greg, are there, from what we've done, I don't know if we're going to have you on future segments, so I want to make sure you get your 2 cents in. What were some, I guess, big takeaways? Please tell me the thesis of. I'm trying not to make it sound like a high school essay question.
We're not there. We're not quite there yet, and I don't want to spoil anything. But I mean, a lot of other authors noting things about Oda, and whether we can say they're intentional or not, we don't really know. But the fact that they've noticed them and put them into their own work shows you the kind of, at least the inspiration that he gives people. But some of the sketches that are in the back of this, boy, they are that's what I'm talking about. And I know you'll get there eventually, and I hope I'll be around for it. But
we're gonna do our best to keep you on for these, because it's definitely really insightful to hear your side.
Are these the Steven casts?
It's whatever we want to call it. I mean, they're essentially the Steven casts.
I mean, I think that's what we should brand them as.
The One Piece magazine Volume 9 Steven cast. I'll make it a very long, unwieldy title. So yeah, these are probably, I don't know how many of these episodes we're going to do. I think things speed up a little bit once you get toward the back, Steven, right? From just what I'm looking at. I might be wrong.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, this was there's a lot of comments in these. Yeah. I think the Hungry Days stuff, like there's a lot of pages of Hungry Days, but they're not as much, it's more taken up by the illustrations and things that are really cool to look at.
Maybe we should just preview kind of what else, like the main section. So we got a whole thing about is this about the volume 90?
The volume production process and little stories. That's a really cool one too. I definitely want to go in on that. And then following that, we have some of that's when we start getting into the design stuff. Let's see. This stuff looks good. Yeah, there's some design stuff that's just picking up panels of the manga. There's the trivia question, and then you get to his actual building and plot
note
sketches.
Collection, I think is what he called it.
Stuff from Alabasta, stuff from Skypia, Water 7,
Whole Cake Island.
All kinds of stuff that is, and then he has some of his plot diagrams for Water 7 and Skypiea.
I think I need to change my pants.
These look
those are
great.
amazing.
Yeah. I haven't even given these a very close look yet, just because I've been waiting to do this with you, Stephen. I'm very excited. There's a lot more after that too. So like this is very, very, very dense. So even though we might be not getting through a lot of pages, it's all been super interesting. And Stephen, I can't thank you enough for helping us through this. I love hearing both sides of this. Oda finding inspiration in other authors, and also other authors finding inspiration in him. It's really cool just to see the having just watched what is it the girl Walk On Girl. The night is
the night is short. You watched
Night is Short. Yeah, I just watched that recently.
Finally.
Yeah, and it's all about connectedness through colds and viruses, which is ironic since it came out several years ago. But I think it's true for also creative work, and it's so cool to see like how One Piece connects people past and present. So I think that was a really cool aspect to what we went through. I'm very excited to get to the stuff that ruined Greg's pants just now.
Yeah. And I will say too, obviously we are we're going through this with a fine tooth comb, but I know we say this every time. These magazines are really beautiful things, and if this sounds interesting, if you want to be able to look at all of these and flip through these and look at these illustrations and things, I would highly recommend using something like Amazon Japan or some other shipping service to get a copy of this one. This is volume 9, so that you can read along and look at a lot of these things, because it's definitely worth it.
If you live in America, you can order them from Kino. Kino America will ship all over the country.
Kino Kuniya. We'll try and put some of the links on. Yeah.
It's also very easy to set yourself up with an Amazon.jp account. When I ordered mine, it was here within a week. Or less. So.
Yeah, the funny thing is, and I kid you not, Amazon Japan has been more reliable for me than regular Amazon during this whole COVID thing.
Me too.
100%. I think one of the first orders I did once this started, I'm in New York, so things are extra crazy, but one of the first orders I did was the calendar, which I ordered late, but I ordered it with a few other things, and it came within like 2 days. While I'm still waiting for the Ace novel, and I think that came out a few weeks ago now. It's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, I would very highly recommend you pick this up if you have not. All the magazines are fantastic. They're not really magazines. I think Mooks is the title that's used in Japan.
Bunch of Mooks.
Mooks. They're a bunch of Mooks. Magazine books, but they're really fantastic to add to your One Piece collection. And you really, not only do you not really need to speak Japanese for a lot of them to really enjoy them, you still got Steven here to help you with that. And I don't know if these are coming out in English at any point. I'd highly doubt it. Yeah. So this is, if you want to enjoy it, this is a great way to do it. And Steven, we really, really can't thank you enough for spending over 2 hours going through just the first 30 pages of this. Really appreciate it.
When I started going through it this week, I was like, all right, I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to brush up on this magazine. And the more I read through it, I was just like, oh my God, this is too good. I have to go through all of this.
Yeah. He sent me a message. I'm like, really? Usually we do it in an hour, the whole thing. And okay, I guess luckily this is a time when we have lots of time to do that. So Steven, I want to give you a special shout out here. You just started on a new manga series, which I really enjoyed. I read it today. So tell people about that and where they could find that.
That just came out this week. I had a break because I didn't have to translate the first 54 page chapter the same week that I had a One Piece chapter. But it is called Time Paradox Ghost Rider. I have to remember which order the words go in. And it is a manga. It is a creative team. It's a writer and an artist The writer did some, I want to say, Jump Plus material. I was not familiar with it. And the artist, he did a series not too long ago called Cross Account. And then he was working in Jump Plus recently as well. And so they are teaming up on this one. And the idea is that you have a unsuccessful wannabe mangaka who he is on the verge of giving up his dream of getting into Shonen Jump when a lightning strikes his apartment and turns his microwave into a time machine, which if you've ever seen Steins Gate, that should be very familiar. But it spits out every week. It spits out an issue of Shonen Jump from exactly 10 years in the future. And it also happens to contain the most amazing manga that he has ever read before. That is just starting in that issue.
It's like the manga version of Early Edition. Remembers that TV show from the 90s?
Oh, man.
Is that the name of the one with Steve Carell, or what is that called? Morning Show. That's something else. I haven't seen that. I just have heard of it. But it does confirm that One Piece ends by 2030. So there's that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I probably shouldn't talk about them, but I will say I got to see the original drafts of the first 3 chapters, which did have, there were some details that they altered for the final version, which were very interesting. Maybe at some point in the future, I will feel at liberty to talk about them. But for now, I'll just say that it was interesting to see the differences. But yeah, it's really neat. He basically copies. He thinks that he just hallucinated all of this, and so he basically draws the manga again as he remembers it and passes it off as his own. And then we find out at the end of the first chapter that the actual person who will in 10 years go on to draw this manga has already been thinking about it and sees the issue of Jump that has her manga in it. And she's like, why is this in Jump? And that is the dramatic, the start of the dramatic tension. And yeah, it's been pretty good so far. I think it's a good page turner. It really gets you hooked and keeps you moving through it.
They always give you the big text heavy ones, though. That one has a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't like I can't tell how to translate this, or it has all of these creative decisions that are very strange. It's just, it's about making manga, so it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, I'm looking forward to people seeing the next couple chapters because it's pretty good.
Yeah. I'm excited to read more of it. I wasn't expecting I forgot about oh yeah, someone must have written this. So it must be. Anyway, I also want to thank Greg for coming on. What are you working on that you can tell people about?
Just everything you hit on at the top of the show. And again, that Monster Hunter book should be coming out this summer, but not sure with Corona World.
Yeah.
But we're hoping for it.
Things going okay there? You doing everything going okay in Japan at the moment?
I feel like a dog. You doing okay?
You doing okay there, Greg?
There, buddy.
That's how I talk to everyone now. That's the post-COVID way of talking to people. It's like, everything you doing okay?
Yeah, we're good. We're
Okay.
doing all right. Thank you.
Okay, good.
You doing okay?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about it later. So, no, thank you so much, Greg, for coming on. Really appreciate it. Alex, where could people find you and all your good shows?
Well, please follow me on Twitter if you haven't already, @dude! All one word. Weeb Simpsons is my shitpost account that I occasionally post at. I know I have no excuse to not update it these days, but believe it or not, I am working. And I have a life, despite it all. Speaking of, you can listen to me every week now for the foreseeable future on Toho Yaro, a Japanese film club podcast that I do with Joey and V. This upcoming episode is Linda, a movie that is pretty rare now. It wasn't so rare at the turn of this century. But please go watch it and then listen to the episode. It's a really great movie, especially if you like music by the Blue Hearts. And please go to superartfight.com or twitch.tv/superartfight every Saturday for some live art shenanigans. We're going to be doing a special show on the 23rd to benefit the Auto Bar, which is a venue in Baltimore that has hosted our live shows before. So please tune into that. Maybe donate some money if you can. And hopefully I'll see you there.
Steve, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Steve Yurko is my username. You could listen to me on The Deep End. Listen to me on TuneSuite. Watch shows I work on, Duncanville on Fox and on Hulu, and watch new episodes of Rick and Morty. And that's it.
Soon enough, you'll be on Forced to Watch 4Kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're well beyond that now. Yeah, we gotta start putting that together now.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of Patreon, before we move on, we are doing a special Wednesday show every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Depending on who's there, it is either we play some Jackbox games and mess around, and it's a lot of fun. Or we've also been doing some crewing around episodes. I did one with Sam and Steve and Dennis. I think 2 weeks ago now. And we got to talk a lot about One Piece for several hours, and it was a lot of fun, including what a One Piece Kai should and would look like if it ever happens. So check that all out, patreon.com/One Piece Podcast. Ed, how could people contact us?
Well, you're Zach_Logan on Twitter. I'm Edward E. One Piece. I'm also at We Trailers. Podcast can be found at OnePiecePodcast.com, Twitter.com, YouTube.com, and Facebook.com/One Piece Podcast. OnePiecePodcast@gmail.com is our email address. One Piece Podcast is our Skype name. Please subscribe on SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Subscribe, rate, review on Apple Podcasts, or call us on our phone number. Zach?
And that phone number is 347-497-MAJI.
Maji.
Wow. That phone number is 347-497-6254. Call anytime.
Anytime.
That was creepy.
That was even creepier. With your questions, comments, theories, or why Jorkos D. Ace shouldn't have been killed. So, really enjoyed this. Next week, we're back with our manga recap of chapter 980. And whenever the next break happens, we'll be back with part 2 of our magazine, going through Hungry Days and maybe some of the sketches and a lot more. Really excited for that. Keep checking us out on Patreon every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. And until next week, everyone, my name is Zach.
My name is Ed.
My name is Steve.
And my name is Alex.
And a big thanks to Steven and Greg for coming on this week.
Dead.
We'll see you next week, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.